And we are live. Good afternoon, YouTube, for the long-awaited Q&A on collector car insurance. It's time to put the beast away, and so we're gonna come in. We got two heavy hitters here, two of my favorite people in the whole world, because they saved me money this year. We got them. We got Jackson Levers and Raul Carvajal coming in to answer your questions on collector car insurance. And the pre-questions that have come in are fantastic. It's probably going to take up the entire session. So if we don't get any more, don't feel bad if you ask a question we don't get to, because we just got a ton of questions that have come in. Again, I want to remind everyone that these are sponsored by Digital OnRamp WSI, your full service digital marketing company. We take searchers, turn them into visitors, visitors into buyers, and buyers into lifelong clients. Also by Pillowsonic. Pillowsonic makes a great device for listening to podcasts, music, relaxing sounds while you go to sleep, and it won't disturb your partner. So if you're like me and you've got terrible tinnitus from playing in rock bands and racing cars and all that kind of stuff, you can listen to something on your Pillowsonic. It comes right through the pillow, and it has a nice little relaxing way to go back to sleep. You don't get that sound in your ears, that ringing in your ears when you're trying to sleep. So there's a link down below in the description for Pillowsonic. Make sure you're using it to make a great stocking stuffer for Christmas. And the last thing we have is Fun Gifts for Everyone. Is a great site to go to get printed merchandise. There's a lot of customizable stuff there for the family. You get that hard to shop for aunt, cousin, father, sister, brother, whatever. Fungiftsforeveryone.com is a great place to go and pick that stuff up. And with no further ado, let's get right to it, because we've got a lot of questions here today. I'm going to introduce our guests. It's Jackson Levers and Raul Carvajal. And gentlemen, why don't we go ahead and introduce you? Tell us where you are. Give us your plugs. We'll start with Raul.
Hi, everyone. Happy to be here today. Raul Carvajal with the Carvajal Agency. We're an independent brokerage uh, right here in West Virginia, licensed in Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia. And what we do is we customize coverages not specific to any carrier. We're shopping the open market for you, saving you time, saving you a ton of money. So we're at Carvajal Agency. You can find us online at timeforcoverage.com.
Great. Jackson?
Hello, everyone. I'm Jackson Lefevers with Shenandoah Risk Management. We are an insurance company that is licensed in Virginia, Maryland, Tennessee, and West Virginia. We service home and auto, small business owners, and anybody with life insurance needs and agribusiness needs. We are very oriented with our underwriters. We take a hands-on approach with everybody. We're not just somebody that you're going to call if you have a claim or when the bill's due. You're going to hear from us. And in my eyes, that client agent relationship just goes a long way. And we're here to help you when you're having a bad day, or just people only like to call us when they get a bill or they need something. We don't want to be like that. We just want to create a hands-on approach to help you get through your needs, and things like this. I think are very important to get a better understanding and figure out what you're paying for and where your insurance is going. So, Jackson Lefevers with Shenandoah Risk Management.
Great. Thanks for the introduction there, guys. And again, I want to point out to the audience that I invited these two guys not just because they know a lot about insurance, but they've actually proven it to me by actually taking a look at my policies and saving me a ton of money. So it's not just I didn't just invite two guys out of the blue. I brought two guys who've actually proven that they can actually get the job done. So with that said, let's get right to it, because we got another stump the band. Every time we do one of these Q&As, I'm always impressed by the level of questions that come in. And the first one is, what are the definitions of agreed value, stated amount, and replacement cost? Which is appropriate for a collector car, and which should be used for a daily driver or a tow vehicle?
So, in my opinion, agreed value, and stated amount are kind of the same thing. The amount is agreed upon or it is stated. Um, Replacement cost is what it would what it takes to replace that without depreciation. Most of the time, with American National, just like Raul said, this is all going to vary from carrier to carrier. But with American National, it's an agreed value. It's what we agree. The company and the owner of the vehicle agrees as to what the insurable value of that vehicle is. So that is what we use for the collector cars, or the Chrome policy is what American National calls it.
Is that an acronym?
I'm sorry.
What does that? What was the? You said the name of the policy. What does that? Is that like an acronym that stands for something or?
Chrome, no, it's just the type of policy that's just the name of the
Okay.
policy that they use for the collector cars.
Ro, you have any follow-ups to that?
Yeah, so just to echo what Jackson said, he's right on. So what you're looking at is the amount of coverage that you have on your vehicle. And that's an important number to understand. A lot of times you're going to use an appraisal to determine that number. But when the time comes, the terrible things happen to your vehicle, that's the number that you need to know, because that's how much coverage you have to put that car back together as whole. And so you want to make sure that you're reviewing that number with your agent, and that it makes sense. It's something that you agree upon, so that when the time comes and there's a claim, you're not getting upset or getting shortchanged, in your opinion, by the coverage that you're carrying.
And the question included questions about the tow vehicle and trailers. Can you explain how what considerations do you have to worry about if you're dragging your collector car around with a trailer? I know I personally I'm dragging my cars from shop to shop as they go through restoration.
Are you asking if the vehicle is on a trailer and gets hit by another vehicle on the roadway?
More interested in what kind of coverage somebody should have for their tow vehicle and their trailer.
I mean, the trailer's probably going to be covered under a commercial auto policy. Are you talking about like if they're hauling the vehicle somewhere?
Yeah, like I have a personal trailer that I just use to drag my car from place to place. If I'm going to put it in a show or something and I don't want to drive it, I just roll it into the trailer and haul it behind the truck, and then when we get there I can drive the car for the weekend and then just put it back in the trailer and zip it home back to the garage when the weekend's over. There's a lot of people do that kind of thing.
Yeah, so typically I mean, in the state of West Virginia, trailers are supposed to be on a commercial auto policy if they're tagged. Um, and then you're going to have coverage. There's going to be a vehicle, there's going to be an auto policy on the vehicle as well, on the truck pulling it.
To add to that, if we're talking about just a personal trailer, it's going to follow your auto coverage that you're
Yeah.
pulling the trailer with. So whatever coverage you have on your truck is going to cover your liability for that trailer. Your comprehensive coverage that you have on the car is what's going to be used to fix any damage that's done to the car. So even if you're not physically driving it, it's still important to make sure that you have the right coverage amounts on it, because any type of damage that you take on your precious collectible vehicle that's what you're going to need to have that bucket of money to get it fixed if something happens to it.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that the increased value in trailers over the last 2 years probably makes you, like, for example, my trailer was very inexpensive to purchase. If I went to replace it this year, I would probably have to pay 5 times what it cost me to buy. Um, so I'm assuming that it used to be you wouldn't really care about the value of the trailer because it was so low, but now it can cost you $10,000-$15,000 to replace a nice trailer.
And one thing that I would add there, Marty, if you're driving down the road and you pull through a stop sign and somebody T-bones you and damages that car, that's going to fall under their auto policy on their property damage. One thing that if I would maybe suggest looking at is if someone is doing a lot of hauling with their collector car on the back, looking at the underinsured property damage portion of their auto policy, because if somebody has a state minimum, which is $25,000, and that car costs $50,000, and somebody blows that stop sign and runs through that, now we've got $25,000 worth of money or value out there that's kind of floating around and not not kind of, we don't know what to do with. It's in limbo and it's going to be a big issue. So if you've got $100,000 worth of underinsured property damage on your policy and they've only got 25, well, there's some money there to go ahead and get your car fixed while we're working, through the claim.
Yeah, that's a good thing to think about with the trailer because
Yeah.
it used to be, again, you would have a $10,000 truck and a $1,000 trailer, and now you've got a $50,000 truck and a $20,000 trailer towing a $30,000 collector car.
Right.
So
Yeah, I mean that's a good way to look at it too. It can pertain to the whole. We'll call it a rig. The truck, the trailer, the car. You want to make sure that everything is insured. People always use the term, "Well, I'm overinsured." Well, that's not a bad thing. You could probably never own too much, I guess.
you were going to say something there, Raul.
No, I was just gonna say exactly what Jackson was leading to, that under and uninsured coverage on your auto policy is critical for that exact reason. If you're towing, a classic car, most people riding around with state limits aren't going to have the coverage in place to be able to replace that thing. They're not going to be able to get you a new trailer. And sure, I guess you could try to go after them in the court systems, but that's going to take a lot of time and money. That's what the insurance is for. If you're talking with your agents, we're having real conversations about what risks you face on a day-to-day basis. We're going to talk about the value of your trailers. We're going to talk about what you're towing, and we're going to make sure that you have the right coverages in place so that they kick in and we get that car replaced for you without all the headaches and hassles of having to fight somebody through the court system. Let us worry about that kind of stuff. You worry about just getting that car back on the road.
Cool. The next question is people are really confused about terminology and insurance. And they kind of said, a lot of times I'll meet with an agent and they're just unprepared. So, what other terminology should an insurance buyer be familiar with before they sit down with an agent?
I cannot stress enough the understanding of deductibles. So deductibles is what you're paying out of your pocket towards a claim. That's how much money you feel comfortable coming out of your pocket before the insurance is kicking in to pay whatever's left on that claim. I have a lot of conversations with deductibles with all of my clients. That's something that varies. Everybody's financial situation is very different. Some people are willing to take on a higher deductible because they have some expendable cash that they can put up in an accident. And what that means is they're going to pay less month to month in a premium, or the opposite of that. They're not going to want to put up, anything but a couple $100s in the event of a claim, and they're happier paying a higher monthly bill to get that lower deductible. So understanding what the deductible means and how it applies to your coverage, so important. I can't stress it enough.
Yeah, I mean, deductibles, they play a huge part in it. They affect a lot of things. They can affect, at the time of the accident, monthly payments, things like that. I I mean, people come to us because we have a greater understanding of the profession that we're in and what we're doing. And I do believe that it is our job to kind of inform people on what they're buying and what they're purchasing and how we're choosing to protect them or how they're choosing to protect ourselves, because they do come to us at the end of the day for recommendations or to try to put the best risk management plan in place for them. So something that I like, and these are big words. My wife is a veterinarian and she comes home all the time and she's using these big words and she's going on. And I'm like, could you talk to me in English, please? And she's like, yeah, it has cancer. And I'm like, oh, well, you could have just said that. So we're using these big words: underinsured, uninsured, roadside assistance. They don't sound big, but they could have a bigger definition at the end of the day. So I try to sit down and go through each step. Bodily injury, property damage, uninsured, underinsured, what the roadside assistance is, if they want any rental reimbursement, what their deductibles are, and what the comp and the collision cover. Collision's pretty simple, but people ask me all the time, well, what's my comprehensive? Okay, that's going to be your fire, lightning, theft, glass breakage, anything like that. Some people just don't have an understanding of that, and then I think that creates a better, back to how I started, that creates a better client agent relationship, and it just can make everything run very smoothly throughout the process.
Yeah.
So I think just explaining everything, and I think kind of jumping back to question one, agreed value, and stated amount, they all kind of mean the same thing at the end of the day, but we're using three different words to to get down to one thing. So just ask the questions. We're here to help you, and to protect you and to put the best plan in place for you.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to answer that question is one of the things I liked about working with both of you guys is that you walked me through all of the details of the policies and you asked me if I understood what was going on and you explained it. I'm probably a more sophisticated insurance buyer than most, so I kind of know how these things work. But you guys all along the process made sure I understood what was going on. And I think it's important that when you're buying insurance, that you have an agent who will explain things step by step as you're going through the process. And if you stop them and ask for a question or ask for clarification, if they can't explain it in a way that you understand, you should probably find a different agent.
Yeah, time to run.
Cool. All right. So here's something that there's an old joke about how many non-working cars do you have? And the answer is just the normal amount. And then they look at you and go, well, the normal amount's zero. And you go, ooh, okay, maybe I'm not normal. Maybe I have more than the normal amount. So should I insure my non-running project car before I start its restoration?
I, in my opinion, that's the owner's decision. If if you've got it in your garage and your garage burns down, how upset are you going to be that car just burned up? You're probably going to be upset. So the way that it works with American National is when the appraisal's done and stuff, when the appraisal is completed, it is a stated finished value. So once we go ahead and insure that car, that car might only be worth, you might have just bought a hunk, or a car for 5 grand, and at the end of this restoration process, it's going to be $25,000. We're going to agree that it's going to be $25,000 at the end. So that's what we're insuring it for, even while it's non-running. So if if it burns down halfway through the restoration process, your garage does, you know, it's going to be $25,000 worth of coverage, not $15,000 worth of coverage, or whatever it might be at that point in time. And to my knowledge, I think that does vary carrier to carrier as far as the way that works.
Absolutely, it does. Every carrier is going to be a little different. It's important to understand what coverages you have. Talk to your agent. Uh, if you don't have one, you need to talk to Jackson or I, 100%. But I would absolutely just want to point out that you're taking a big risk there by not having it insured. So people, a lot of times when they talk about, oh well, it's not on the road, I don't need insurance. We're looking at two different things here. The first piece is liability, right? I cause an accident, I hurt somebody while I'm on the road. Do you need coverage when the car's not running? No, it's not on the road. It makes perfect sense, right? But the other piece of that is the value of the car. You put a lot of time and money into that car getting it ready. The worst thing that could happen is exactly what Jackson said: a fire, something crazy happens, the garage goes down, and now all of your hard work is gone and you have nothing to show for it. So it's not that you need the insurance for the liability, because no, you're not on the road, you're not hurting somebody, but you definitely want something in place to replace the car itself if it takes damage.
Yeah, like I said, the prices going up on collector cars is a real eye opener. I had bought a car for very little money, less than $1,000 for as a parts car, and we started looking at it, and it was a really rare piece, and decided maybe we're going to give this, instead of using it for parts, we're going to try and look into restoring it. And I'm shocked at the offers that I'm getting it in unrestored condition. Um, you know, if it was stolen, it would be a significant financial loss now. Whereas originally, I really wouldn't have cared. I mean, it was but now it's like, oh well, here's this thing that used to just be a pile of junk I was going to pull parts off of, and now I've kind of gotten attached to it as a future project, and my wallet's kind of gotten attached to the fact that it's got some real value to it. Similarly, I got the other project in the garage is probably fits the next one. I have bought parts for my project. Are they covered before I install them? And I'm one of those guys who's, every Christmas I get the large stock of parts, that's going to be installed in the next summer. And, well, I've got like 3 Christmases worth of parts sitting outside my blue Challenger waiting to get put on the car. So what should I do about that? Should I insure those things before they're put on the car, or should I just insure them as part of the car? Tell me.
This is another one of those case by case scenarios and carrier by carrier. But general rule of thumb, yes, you want to have some type of coverage in place because those are going to hold value. You're going to put them onto that vehicle at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later, because we want to get that car up and running and ready for the upcoming show year. But yeah, you want to have some type of coverage in place. Everybody's situation is going to be a little bit different though. So we need to sit down and we need to have that conversation. What's worth insuring? What do we want to make sure is covered, and what are we paying for? Versus what isn't going to be a big deal if it gets stolen, if it gets lost, if it gets damaged due to some type of catastrophe, what have you. So certainly a question that we need to sit down and go through and have a good answer for.
Yeah, it's definitely something worth discussing. I feel like, especially if you have a lot of the high end parts, or something that's hard to come by, things like that. Something that I will add onto that is, once the car is under reconstruction, it's covered with American National and the Chrome policy. If the car is under construction, then the parts are covered. Okay. Now, let's say you got them set in your garage before you've started the reconstruction of the proper or of the vehicle. If there was a total loss, I think those would fall under personal property on your homeowner's policy. So if you had a total loss, on your homeowner's property, if you have a or your homeowner's policy, if you have an other structures coverage on there. So you have coverage if your garage is detached. You have other structures coverage, and that's what that's pertaining to, your garage. And then you do get personal contents, what is inside that garage. So if you were to have a loss, um, if lightning were to strike it and burn it down, obviously you're going to file a claim for that. And then the adjuster is going to come out and they're going to ask you, what did you have in here? And you're going to make an itemized list of everything that was in there. And you're going to turn that over to the insurance company. And they're going to, you know, they're going to work through it for you. So, in my opinion, I think there's coverage on both ends.
And so that kind of goes back to making sure that when you sit down with your insurance agent, you
Exactly.
walk through and make sure you don't double your coverage. If something's going to be either included on your homeowners or scheduled out, you don't
Yeah.
necessarily need to cover it in your collector car policy.
Yeah. And also, there's a lot of special limits in homeowners policies, and this will definitely differ from carrier to carrier. And if that's a concern, or if that's your hobby, or that's your niche, just ask your agent, do we have an endorsement for this that we could put on the homeowners policy, or what's the special limit on this right now, or what's your company's policy on this. So
Yeah, I'm one of those odd people who has to watch this. I have a guitar collection is worth more than my living room furniture. So. Um, Next question is, if my project car is sent to a professional shop for work, is it covered?
For like paint detail stuff like that.
Uh, for whatever it's getting done. I mean, there's a lot of times you'll drop them off for an interior or for an engine replacement, or even like now guys are just dropping them off to be tuned. So if it's, I think that's to me that's the nightmare is you get the car done, you send it to the engine tuner, they put it on the dyno and catches fire, or something like that. So that's the nightmare scenario.
To me, that would fall under their policy at the end of the day, the garage keeper's policy. At the end of the day, now there might be a type of deal where your policy kicks in and covers it, but ultimately it's going to come back onto them. If you just had work done, and then I give you a prime example right out here in front of our office, probably 5 or 6 years ago, a good friend of mine had picked his car up. He had all this performance work done to it, and they installed the fuel line behind the firewall. So something happened and it popped off and caught fire, and it was literally spraying flames through the air conditioner vents in the car. And it burned him up pretty good, burned his arm up pretty good. I mean, it literally happened. I mean, I can see where it happened. It happened in our driveway. And his insurance kicked in, but ultimately they were at fault. So if they can prove negligence to the company that did work on your car, that's who that claims is going to fall under at the end of the day.
Yeah, Jackson's spot on. There's a term in insurance that we use. It's called care, custody, and control, and so that's going to be included in that garage keeper's policy. While that vehicle is in their care, custody, and control, they're responsible for it. They're going to take care of any damage that's done to it. What is going to be important to have though is making sure that you have the right coverages in place so that if something happens when you're either going there, coming back, something mechanical happens to the car, like you said, it just bursts into flames. It wasn't that they did anything wrong; it just blew up on the dyno. Now we've got a very different scenario. So it's going to be case by case. There's going to be a lot of work to be done to make sure that the right people are paying the claim. But for simple things, mechanic messed this up. It collapsed while it was on the lift, things like that. That's going to be taken care of by the garage, and their business policy is going to own all that.
Is there anything a owner can do to protect themselves in case the shop is either underinsured or if they're taking a really long time? Like, can your personal policy, put the car back right and then subrogate against the carrier for the shop?
I think we need to add subrogation to that list of big terms to understand. That's a good one. So
Yeah.
yeah, subrogation is in layman's terms, or the easiest way I can say it is, as the insurance company, I'm going to go ahead and fix your car. I'm going to pay for it. You're going to be good to go. And now I'm going to go after whoever's at fault, and I'm going to get my money back that I just put out to fix your car. And yeah, it works that way for most policies. Again, carriers are different, but just about every carrier does it the same in some form or fashion. Subrogation is going to be a big part of that. Absolutely. We're going to
Yeah.
make sure every insurance company at the bottom of the day, it wants to make sure that you, the client, is happy and taken care of. And then we're going to go get our money on the back end for whoever's at fault.
That was exactly what happened with the guy out here in front of the office. We fixed it, and then we went to collect our money from the insurance company, the carrier that had the garage that had done the performance package on the car. That's what it was called.
Cool. Let's move on to the next one. What if my car and its parts are separated? Well, so, for example, I have my the car's at a body shop, and maybe all of the interior parts get sent to the interior place, and then there's a loss at one location. So this actually this happened for a while in a pretty famous case in Pennsylvania, where a company was doing high-end restorations, but they outsourced their interior stuff, and somebody found out that there were like high-end leather hides at the interior place, and broke in and stole everything. And so there were probably 30 or 40 cars that were affected by that, or 30 or 40 insureds who were infected by that. So is that something that is that just thrown onto the shop, or is that something, like, I guess if you had those things at home, you could have the same problem. So is there any way to protect yourself against that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, not to sound like a broken record, but this is another one of those situations that's going to vary a little bit depending on your carrier. But as Jackson said earlier, a lot of policies are going to include the parts and the car as it is as kind of a total package. As a once it's completed, it's worth X, and so we're covering all of it, whether it's actually installed or not. Again, you've got to know your policy language. If you have questions, you've got to talk to your agent, because you can't take this as just this is how your policy reads. But a lot of them are going to cover that, and so you're protected. In the case where it's a business that gets broken into, they're going to have coverages in place for their business, and so you're going to be able to get that back from the business. But if let's say I have my car over at somebody else's, driveway, and we're working on it over there, but then something happened at my house and all my parts are gone now. Yes, there would be coverages in place to make sure that I can get those parts back.
And I guess, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna just add one more thing there. So, as like Raul said, on a business level, they're going to have coverage in their business owner's policy, or the any package that they might have to cover stuff that they have in their inventory or things like that. On a personal level, and I know this to be true with American National. I don't know how it is with other carriers, but with American National, you can have 10% of your contents coverage anywhere in the world. So if you've got a turbo and a, I don't know, brake pads or whatever you might have with at your buddy's house down the street because you don't have a garage and that's where you're working on it. If those are high value and his garage gets broken into and stuff gets, damaged or taken, you do have percent of your contents coverage on your homeowner's policy anywhere in the world. So that's something that you can kind of play with. 10%. It depends on what the contents coverage on your house is, but if you 10% is 10% of something. So if they're not crazy high items, but they are of value to you, that is an avenue that you could reach out to your agent and talk to about.
Cool.
Good point.
Yeah, and I guess it's important to be personally covered, because you never know. And today, a theft like that might drive a shop out of business. Um,
Yeah,
so
and I think that's the overarching goal of today's talk, is making sure that you have the personal coverages in place. Because when it comes down to it, do you really want to depend on the other guy to have the right coverage if he caused the accident? Do you want the shop to have the right business coverage? You don't know what their financial situations are. They go under. Now, who's left without a car? You are. So let's make sure that you, as the owner, have the right coverages in place, that you're protected, and then the rest of them can figure it out. But ultimately, at the end of the day, let's make sure that you and your stuff are protected, so that when the worst happens, you're not surprised by how your insurance policy responds.
cool. So this is something that this is a question. I'm assuming this is by somebody who, like me, has a pretty big stash of parts. It says, what is the best way to insure parts and parts cars? Can these be scheduled on a homeowner's policy? And these are things that are not actual drivable running cars, I'm assuming. Like, I don't know. I know I personally have a pretty good stash of parts for the type of cars I typically buy. because you never know when you're going to need that one specific little thing or that bracket or that, and and parts are getting harder to find. And this has been the year where we discovered that something gets made in China, it might not get shipped over here for years. So your
Yeah,
part
you,
stash has
you
got to
always buy
creep up.
two.
Um, so I guess the question is, how should, say somebody has a pretty decent stash of parts, not a shop or anything, just in their personal possession. Well, should they schedule that on their homeowners? Should they look at taking out a separate policy for that? What's the best way to handle that?
I think that just varies from carrier to carrier, and see what their policies allow and the limitations that they allow. I would honestly just say, just to reach out to your agent and talk to him about it. I don't really know the correct answer to that question, but I would not think that you would schedule them on a homeowner's policy. That's usually, you know, reserved for, art, guns, jewelry, things of that, expensive silverware, china, things of that nature. So on that one, I would say just reach out to your agent and see what he thinks on that one, or he or she.
Yeah, in my experience, because I work with so many different carriers, I can attest that Jackson's 100% correct on that. Some carriers are going to be fine with it, and you can do it. There's not a lot of them. Only a couple come to mind off the top of my head, but plenty of them are not okay with that. They're going to want a separate policy. So, yeah, you're spot on there. You want to make sure that you're talking to your agent, understand where you're at and what coverages you have, and how to complete that whole package.
Right? And I'm assuming that a lot of carriers treat these different, or basically because of the difficulty of dealing with any type of claim and the specialization and questions over value and all of that, make this such a special case that you really got to talk to the right carrier to make sure that you get what you need.
Yeah, every carrier has a different appetite for risk. Some are going to be, very lenient on jewelry coverages. Some are going to be super tight, and they're going to want an appraisal on anything and everything in the house. It all depends on what their appetite is for the risk, how they understand their claim history with their other clients in the past is going to affect how they want to handle claims in the future. So yeah, it's very different depending on who you're talking to and what company you're with. So just again, sitting down and understanding what you have and what you need is the best advice that we can offer.
Yeah, yeah. I think Raul is kind of spot on, or is really spot on with that. Our clients are constantly evolving. They're finding ways to make money, and they're taking different avenues. So you might necessarily in 2021 not have that many parts. You might just have a car, and the policy that we offer um, covers everything that you need. But in year 2025, you could have found, another avenue or something else that you like, and this policy might not fit your needs and what you're doing. So, ethically, as insurance agents, if we can't perform a task for you, or we know that it's not a good policy for you, to tell you that, hey, this might be a better option, or maybe we take this and we move this here. There's always options to be had. So just like Raul said, talk to your agent. There's 100 different carriers out there, and just figure out what fits you best, and what fits your needs and the protection that you need for what you're doing at the current point in time.
Cool. Next question is, if I rent or borrow space, does this affect my policy?
No renting allowed. So I'm assuming they're talking about renting, like renting a house, or are they talking about renting like
It could be renting a storage facility. Another thing a lot of guys do is, up in Pennsylvania, they have old mushroom mines and stuff where they will pull cars down into. for the winter to for storage. There's a lot of places like that where they'll put things underground or to to put things away for the winter so they don't get damaged. So I guess
So
I would assume that when they rent or borrow space, it's I'm going to put my car someplace else for the winter, and it's not under my control.
So the car is going to need to be garaged wherever your policy lists it. So if you're keeping it in a particular place, whether you physically own that space or not, the carrier just needs to know where that is. And depending on the carrier, they're probably going to have some follow up questions like, is it fully enclosed? Does it have a lock on the door? Stuff like that, that they know that the car's not just sitting on the side of the road somewhere where it's going to be an easy claim. But whether or not you physically own the space or not isn't as important as the insurance company knowing where that car is. And again, depending on the carrier, they're probably going to have some follow up questions about how it's being stored.
yeah, Roll hit that nail right on the head. With us on the Chrome policy, there is a question when we're putting together a proposal and things like that. Is the vehicle kept? Is the vehicle garaged at a different location? And if we know that up front, that's going to make everybody's life a lot easier all around. If there is in the event of a loss, now I have to explain. Sometimes the client has to take a little bit of responsibility. And and by what I mean by that is, if in year 2021 the car is at your house, but in year 2023 you decide to move it to Leroy's house down the road and keep it garaged and meet all the requirements there, well, you have to let us know that, because if we have no way of knowing that, we don't. And I've ran into this before, and that's why I'm kind of stressing it a little bit. Is something has happened and they've not let us know. The client has not made us aware of the change, and then it's just created a bunch of headaches. So yes, you're going to have coverage. The company just we just need to know, that way we can update your policy. And the first thing they're going to ask, well, why was the car there? That's the first thing they're going to ask in the event of a loss. Um, and another thing, if you're keeping it at a storage facility or something, whoever the manager is, just ask them what their insurance covers. Just a simple question. If this place burns down, what happens to my car? Just ask them. It doesn't hurt to know. And another thing that I always tell people, people ask me all the time, well, my husband's not on my car policy. What if he gets in a wreck? Coverage follows vehicle. It doesn't follow a person. So if this doesn't pertain to this doesn't pertain to a vehicle being garaged at a different location, but would pertain to maybe somebody else, maybe Marty driving Raul's car. If you're in a wreck, there's still going to be coverage on that vehicle. Coverage follows vehicle. I know we had talked a little bit before, Marty, when we were talking about doing this. And one of the questions, and the last one, I think you had talked about, what if I loan my car to a movie set? I think is what you had said,
Yeah,
and it gets in a wreck or something like that. Coverage follows vehicle. Now they're going to have a lot of questions, but there is coverage that follows that vehicle. It doesn't follow a person; it follows the vehicle. So
and that's
that's
why whatever you're doing with your vehicle, you really need to let your insurance agent know.
yeah. Any change, especially on the. I don't feel like it's that big of a deal just on your regular auto, because you're probably not going to store, your Hyundai Tucson at your friend Leroy's house and get up every morning and Uber down there and get it. But with the collector's cars, yeah, it's a thing. People house it everywhere. Just let us know, and that'll take care of a lot of issues, just like Raul said.
The next question is my attached or detached shop covered by my homeowner's policy? And uh, is that a different answer if the shop is on a different lot than the house?
So your garage whether attached or not, as long as it's on the property, is going to be included in your homeowners. Now, what I will say is that, again, you've got to talk to your agent, because if you have a garage that's more than just your standard run of the mill builder's grade garage, you're going to want to have better coverages in place for that. A lot of carriers will only offer, let's say, 10% of your dwelling structure coverage to additional structures. That number can be changed depending on the carrier that you're with. But we've got to know what you have and what you don't have to make sure that those numbers make sense. So yes, it can be covered. It should be covered, but that's all part of the discovery process with your agent to know what the values are on those different structures and making sure that they are insured.
Yeah, I remember your eyes, kind of grew when we talked about the details of my garage in my hall. We were doing my policy.
Yeah, I think your garage is almost the size of your house, isn't it?
Pretty much. Um, so,
Yeah, I mean, Raul, the only thing that I would say that, besides it being on a different lot, if it's on the same lot, if you are operating a business out of there for some crazy reason, if you're working on cars or doing something like that, it's gonna be a different. There's gonna be a different set of criteria there if you're operating a business out of that
so
garage.
that
But if
that's
it's
that gets us to the next question a little bit. Are there activities that I do in my shop that would not be covered? And I think this is kind of a fine line where how much of it is your buddies coming over and you're working on their cars before it becomes either a business or an implicit business that your other people's stuff is always coming in and out, and you're doing this enough that when is when is when are you actually doing something that you shouldn't be doing.
if a client came to me and asked me that very same question, I would say the moment you start exchanging anything for value, if you start money wise, if they say, "Oh, well, I'll pay you $100 to drop the engine out of this thing," that's where I would say that it could start to get chippy. But other than that, I don't. I mean, if you're doing work for other people and putting cars on the road, that I feel like that could come back on you as a liability claim if things got hairy. You know what I mean? Just don't work on other people's stuff.
Yeah, that's a great point. If you're getting paid for the work that you're doing, and maybe it's not even cash, maybe you're getting
Yeah.
paid in other items. I'm going to give you my old beater parts car if you help me with this car. Depending on the state that you're in, that could be considered getting paid. So be careful with that. Some of the other things that I've seen carriers have real big issues with are maybe heavy welding operations. If you're doing like some serious welding work in your garage, a lot of carriers can be kind of funny about you know the whole welding fire stuff inside of a garage. So make sure that you're having that conversation with your agent to understand what you're doing and what safety practices are in place. That can also be one of those things where as long as the company knows about it, it's not going to be a problem. But if there's a perceived shadiness or hidden activities, then insurance companies have a higher tendency to want to reject those types of claims. So just being open and honest and finding what's going on, and that way we can have a good discussion about what coverages we need to have in place.
Well, yeah, who doesn't love playing with their oxyacetylene torches?
Exactly.
I would also add to that any structural change to the vehicle. Like if you like Raul said, if you welded a I don't know, if you welded something on it and it broke and caused you to wreck, or something along those lines, I could see some fits being thrown about that. But yeah, I think Raul really hit the nail on the head on that one. So
Yeah, well, we were at our limit, and we still got 5 questions to go. Can you guys stick around for a couple more minutes and wrap these up?
Absolutely.
All right,
Yeah, I'm in.
cool. So number 11, are there insurance concerns with storing fuel or other flammable materials, such as oxygen in acetylene tanks or paint or those kind of things, on on your property at your residence?
I mean, Raul, go ahead.
Are there concerns? Yes. Does it mean that you're not allowed to have insurance? No.
Yeah,
It's all about doing things the right way and making sure that you're being safe about it. As long as you're not, storing large tanks for a commercial purpose, you're running a under the table garage out of your own private property. That's it's a conversation to be had. Again, as your agent, it's something that I would want to know and understand what the operation is. What are you storing? How is it being stored? So that we can make sure that we have the right coverages in place. Accidents happen, and so we want to make sure that you're protected the right way. So that's kind of where I would sit at it from my vantage point. Jackson, you might have a little more specific carrier information just from your side, or is it kind of the same thing from your
I,
side?
it's I would say that it's pretty much the same thing. Just like Raul said, there's no federal law saying that you cannot own these things. I mean, that's what you have a garage for. I mean, you don't keep these things in your mudroom. You know what I mean? So I've never had a loss where that has been a concern. I mean, I think it's definitely something that should be brought to our attention, and that if it needs to be noted in the policy or it needs to be noted with an underwriter, we'll note it. But it's not. I don't think it's not going to give you any hiccups or hinder any policies being put in force or anything like that. I mean, that's what it boils down to. That's what a garage is for.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Now,
I would
now
say
if you're keeping a 100-gallon oxygen tank, for cutting stuff, then yeah. But if you just got a regular cutting torch and a little MIG welder or whatever you might use, I don't. There's not going to be any issues there. But as long as you're, like Raul said, not doing anything on the commercial side, or running a chop shop out there on Burke Street, you're going to be okay. So
yeah. I don't know how many people are like me. I am very nervous about storing gasoline and even propane inside a structure. So I always keep. I have a locked deck box separate from my garages in the home. Off by itself, where I lock up. Any of the propane, the gasoline, the diesel, the mixed gas, all over there, so it's not right up against the structure. I'm probably a little more paranoid than most people about that stuff, but I just don't like keeping that in the garage.
you
yeah,
know,
but that's the responsible thing to do. And Jackson said earlier, sometimes you got to put this back on the homeowner themselves. A little bit of common sense. Let's make sure we're not storing the gasoline right next to our torches. And I think that sounds perfect. Actually, I'm really glad to hear that. The gas is being stored in a separate area. Uh, and to go back to the oxygen tanks and that kind of stuff, uh, you know, just letting your agent know that that's what you have and what you're doing with it. I've even seen policies where maybe it's just an exclusion. We're not going to cover a claim that comes from having that tank on your property. Something as simple as that. But we got to know it's there and we got to know what it's being used for. That way we can make sure ultimately that you're protected and that you have the right coverages in place.
and I'll just add, Marty, we've sat here for the last hour and harped on the things that we need, the bad things or the things that could cause loss, to make sure they're covered or in the event of a loss. But hey, as a client, as a buyer or anything like that, let your agent know what you are doing to take these precautions, just like the lockbox, things like that. In the insurance world, we have the person that's called the underwriter. and that's who we talk to. And our job as agents is to collect the information from you, give that to the underwriter, and let them make the decision and things like that. So if we can have, all of a sudden we've got, yeah, he welds, he does this, he does that, but it's stored in a completely separate place, let them know that. Let your agent know that. That could be very, very key in a lot of things that could happen. So, you know, let him know the precautions that you're taking. That's a great. Just like Raul said, yeah, Raul's he loves to hear that because the chances of him having a loss on your garage has just went down astronomically. So, it makes us feel better, as agents about taking on your risk, and helping you manage that. So, absolutely, I'm an advocate for always telling your agent or whoever you're dealing with about the precautions that you are taking on a day to day basis to protect your assets.
Excellent. The next question is, for guys that have a number of cars, is there any way to save on their insurance costs?
Yeah, with American National, there's a multi-car discount.
Yeah, it's pretty standard for most carriers, whether it's American National, like Jackson said, or Haggerty, Safeco. I mean, you name it. Just about everybody has some type of discount for multi policies and multi cars. So yeah, it's just talk to your agent, make sure that everything's put together the right way, and put it all together and save extra money. Who doesn't like saving a little more money?
And I'm
Especially at
assuming,
Christmas time.
I'm assuming that the liability side of things, it's the low number of miles most collector cars get that keeps the prices of those policies in check.
Yeah, with um, with American National, in order to have a Chrome policy, they kind of mitigate the risk on their own. No more than 10,000 miles a year. It's got to be garage kept under lock and key. So the company kind of takes on a little bit of risk on their own, or tries to mitigate that risk, so to speak. So, in my opinion, that is how they can justify lowering the cost, because all of the precautions that are in place to protect your vehicle from the risk is what, yeah, would keep the price down on that for you.
Cool. Next question is on motorcycles. Do they have to be covered all year long, or do they have limited months? Or do you just use the same kind of idea of having fewer miles for the total year, so that keeps your policy inexpensive?
So with American National, we have a motorcycle. There's a totally different policy for motorcycles, and they are year long policies. There's no limited months on that.
Yeah, pretty much every carrier that I work with uses the same structure. Motorcycle policies are going to be separate. They do run all year, but just like your collector car, you're going to get discounts because of the mileage, the usage. Right? They're not on the road during the wintertime most of the time. But if you think about it, it makes sense to have the coverage year round. I can't tell you the number of times in my, you know, I'll say young terms, where it just happened to be a really nice day, even though it was the middle of January. Uh, you want to throw the cover off and go out for a ride. Having the ability to do that just makes sense. So yeah, the coverages are typically going to run year long. I don't know that I would recommend it any other way, even if I had another option.
Cool.
Yeah, and with American National, I'll just add, if you have like the motorcycle safe driving course or things like that, if you can provide documentation of that, it will lower the cost of the policy too. So if it's a money issue that you only wanted for limited months, there are some avenues that we can explore to maybe get that down a little bit for you.
And that's a
So.
great point. And even that motorcycle safety course will allow you to get your motorcycle driver's license endorsement at the end of it usually, which is really handy thing. I know when I moved to Maryland once and I got a new license, they dropped my motorcycle endorsement, even though they're supposed to carry over. Um,
Oh,
and because it had already processed, they wouldn't carry over. They wouldn't they wouldn't do anything about the endorsement. I was going to have to take the test again. But taking the motorcycle safety course not only got me the license again, but it also got me a substantial discount on insurance. So that's a really good tip on motorcycle insurance.
agreed.
Um, how frequently should I? Oh, skip one. This is something we kind of covered already. I don't know if there's going to be much more to add to this. Do storage conditions affect motorcycle or collector car policies?
They certainly can. Again, it's going to be carrier specific. Talk to your agent. If there's any one takeaway, it's going to be it's carrier specific and talk to your agent. It's kind of the answer to everything. Call Jackson. Call me. Let's talk about this stuff one on one. Let's understand your situation. But yeah, so some carriers are going to require that the garage is locked. Other carriers, that's not as big of a deal. They're going to want the vehicles to be covered at all times, in a structure. Some carriers, not as big of a deal. So just understanding what you have and what that carrier specific requirement is going to be super important. It could be the difference of whether or not they're going to cover a claim or not. So you definitely want to make sure that you're reading your policies.
Yeah, just to back Raul up on that, it definitely carrier specific, and with American National, it's got to be garage kept, under lock and key. If there's a huge gaping hole in the roof and water's pouring on it, um, when we write a policy, we have to go out and take pictures of the vehicle and where the vehicle is going to be kept. So, and then we have to submit those. So, underwriting has a good understanding of where the vehicle is and things of that nature. So, as far as conditions, I would say that only in an extreme conditions, gaping holes in the roof or something like that could, it affect the policy.
Excellent. And the last one is there's um, is now that we're having a lot of more time to with COVID to get our projects done. Um, how frequently should I update the value of my project car as it's being restored? People are making some pretty big, especially it used to be the parts weren't all that expensive and you just put the time in. Now paint can cost $15,000 and interior parts can cost a couple grand. So how is it something that you should do as you're scheduling work? Contact your agent or kind of establish an escalating value beforehand when you write the policy.
Yeah, I with American National, I went over this in the beginning. We agreed on a finished value. So as the this is kind of where it kicks back on the owner or the client a little bit. When you come to me and you're going to insure this car that you're restoring, have all of have what it's going to cost, to get it there. And it would be nice if you kept receipts. I would say that, or documentation of the work is done as it goes through the stages. But at the end of the day, it's insured for a set amount. Not It's not going to go from 5,000 to 10,000 because we put the interior in it, and 15 to 16 to 17. It's going to be $25,000 is what that car is going to cost. What that car costs you to get it to where it is, and that's what we're insuring it for. Now that could vary from carrier to carrier, but that's the way that it is with American National. So documentation, in my opinion, is one of the biggest things that you can do to protect yourself as a consumer. As far as insurance goes, or having any work that you might be having done on your vehicle and things like that.
Jackson's right. It does vary a little bit carrier to carrier. With the carriers that I'm appointed with, some of them have that agreed upon value at the very beginning. Others, yeah, I want that conversation. Marty, I think that was a great idea. When you're taking it in to have the work done, you give me a call. Hey, Raul, we're going to go do that paint. It's whatever X dollar amount that we're adding to the value. Cool. Let me make sure that you're all updated and that we're good to go. Simple conversation like that for some of these policies, and then uh, man, that's great advice. I would echo the same thing. Document everything. We all take pictures, right? The befores and afters, and we want to put those photo albums together when we're at the car shows, showing off our beauties. But yeah, hold on to those receipts, document the work that's being done. It's super important, and it's a good way to make sure that if there is a claim that needs to be paid out, that it's being taken care of the correct way. It's great advice, Jackson.
And one thing that I will add, we're all ethically bound to have our clients or potential clients' best interest in mind. So, for anybody that might be dealing with somebody other than Raul or myself, if you do and your company and you have reached out to your agent and they say, well, let me know when you're doing X, Y, and Z, when you're getting the paint, when you're getting the tires, when you're getting the interior. Always, I feel like you should always send an email. That way, there is some documentation, at least on your end, that your agent is aware of this, because you know everybody's human. We're human. I can I have phone calls all the time, and I literally, I wish y'all could see my computer, my other computer, because it's just got sticky notes everywhere of things that we have to remember, and it protects you and it protects the agent. So just send a quick email, say, Jackson, this is Marty, getting $10,000 worth of paint done to my car today at Schneider's Body Shop, and could you add this to my policy and make sure we're insured to value, and boom.
Cool. Yeah, that the changing values in collector cars is a really big concern that many owners are not facing. They're not keeping up with those values, and they it's horrible to have a loss, especially in something that is a special car. But compounding it by not being underinsured and not being able to be made whole is just another level. And so having those conversations regularly with your insurance agent is just so important.
I would say it's not just about when you're having, repairs done, or when you're rebuilding, but even once it's finished, those values are going to change over time. So it's a good idea to make sure that you're having a conversation with your agent even after the car is finished, to make sure that we're insuring to the right value. The worst thing that you could do is have a policy where you're grossly underinsured, and because the value of that vehicle has skyrocketed over the last 5 years, and it just never came up in a conversation. Your agent never brought it up. Shame on them. But you, as the owner, never brought it up either. So shame on you as well. So even everybody thinks about repairs and making sure that those values are updated, because they want to make sure they're paying the right premium. But let's also make sure that even after the car is finished and it's sitting, looking all pretty and shined up, that we're checking those values as well every few years.
Great. Fortunately, go ahead.
I would just add to that. I know we're out of time. Just if call your agent as the consumer and just schedule a review. Your agent should be doing that anyway. But if he or she isn't, reach out to them and say, hey, can we get a review? It's been a while since I saw your face. Let's sit down, have a cup of coffee. Let's review my homeowner's auto, my Chrome, or whatever policies you might have. And that's just a good way to alleviate any I forgot the word I'm looking for there, but just relieve any stress that you might have about being underinsured or making sure everything's insured to value. So
Yeah, I will say that's one of the things I like being a customer of you guys. I know at least once a year, whether I need it or not, we're going to review my policies and coverages. And And like I said, I'm probably a little bit more complex of an insurance customer than most, but I think everybody can benefit, and the fact that you guys are able to save somebody who is really paying attention to that stuff like me a significant amount of money this year, that says a lot about what can be done by really appropriately looking at your coverages and taking out exactly what's needed. I think I'm far better off from a coverage standpoint, even though I'm paying a lot less this year than I was last year.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it works out that way, and then sometimes you got to pay a little bit more to get what you need. That's just the way it goes.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you guys taking the time to meet today and answer these questions. This is going to be posted at all our normal spots. I'll send you guys out links. Why don't you guys go ahead and give yourself one last plug before we go?
Go ahead, Raul.
Thanks, Jackson. So again, Raul, I hope you guys got some value out of this talk today. There were a lot of great questions. Can't wait for the next one. These have been pretty cool for me. I love talking classic cars and making sure that they're being protected the right way. Again, the Carvajal Agency is an independent brokerage. I'm appointed with 30 something different carriers now at this point, licensed in PA, Maryland, Virginia, West Virginia. So anywhere in this mid-Atlantic region, let's sit down, let's have a conversation. Most people have Haggerty on their classic cars. That's great. I'm an appointed agent with Haggerty as well. Let's make sure that you at least have an agent that you can sit and talk to, call on the phone instead of having to dial a 1-800 number and hit up a call center somewhere. Have a face to go with your policies. Let's sit down and talk.
And Jackson?
Yeah, I think that this was my first time doing one of these, and I think this helps an agent grow as well because there's some questions on here that we might not necessarily have thought about, and it challenges us to get to know our policy a little bit more, which in turn, helps guide the client in making the correct decision. And that's what I love so much. It's just I'm a former police officer, just not in that line of work anymore, obviously, but just being able to help people and protect them from everything that they face on a daily basis. So yeah, yeah, it's just it allows me to take a more hands-on approach with my clients, which is kind of the business model that I've set myself up with, of explaining this and sitting down and going through the detailed questions. So I thoroughly enjoyed this. I think it's helped me grow as an agent and will help me better service my clients in the future. So I really appreciate that, Marty and Raul. Again, Jackson Lefevers with Shenandoah Risk Management. We take a hands-on approach with clients to help them get through the challenges of insurance and to help protect them from what they need protected. So we're on Facebook, Google, so you can find us there, or you can shoot me an email at jackson.lefevers at american-national.com. So Jackson Lefevers with Shenandoah Risk Management.
Great, yeah.
I'm glad you brought it up. I forgot to mention again, to get a hold of me. It's time for you to get the right coverages in place. So just go to timeforcoverage.com. That's my website. You can schedule your one-on-one review right there on that website. So timeforcoverage.com. Marty, thanks so much for hosting and for putting this together. Really enjoyed it.
Great, yeah. All of the contact information is going to be in the description. Whoops. Just knocked over my microphone. And I want to thank you guys again for showing up. We'll probably do something similar to this. Maybe we'll do some another one on like annoying coverages, or the worst coverages that people are trying to sell. We'll do something different than the collector cars before the springtime comes along, and we'll probably do another one in the spring. Again, I'm Marty Milligan with WSI. We simplify the internet. Again, full service digital marketing. You can come to us with any help you have, really. Any business problem you have, I can probably help you work out, especially since it's so hard to hire people right now. Having us take a look at your business and talk about doing any outsourcing that can keep you from having to not get things done, or not, prevent you from having to go out and do some hiring. We're also brought to you by PillowSonic. Again, if you want to listen to this in podcast form, you can listen to it on a PillowSonic without disturbing your spouse. There'll be a link in the description for how to get your own PillowSonic. Again, make a great stocking stuffer. And if you're looking for gifts for the family for Christmas, go to fungiftsforeveryone.com and pick out something nice. Again, thank you a lot, guys. We're going to end the stream here, and hope to see you guys, the audience, back next week for another informative talk where we try to make your life better by bringing in the experts that actually know what they're doing to answer your questions.
Thanks, Marty.
Thanks, you.